Okay, so a quick squeeze, taking out the inner fender lining. You can see the rust that's started in this front section. Also, appears to be not too bad in there. So at this stage, what we'll do is clean up this main chassis rail area all the way to the front and give it a lick of paint. First protocol is to degrease the whole area. You can see the sand sits on the chassis rail. So give it a good hose down. This degreaser. While we're here, we're also going to change, well, when we rebuild this front end, we're going to change the limping seal in the front CV, so it's a good idea to get the whole area nice and clean. So while we set up the pressure washer, leave that for a couple of minutes to soak in. Is use this Karcher drain cleaner to flush out the chassis rails. See, it's got little tiny holes in this brass end here. You can feed that in and flush some pressured water through the chassis rail to get all the dirt and muck out. Let's see if we can give a demo on how it works. Ready? Looks like it'll clean pretty well, and it also brings with it the CT18 truck wash with corrosion inhibitor. Let's give it a go. Here are the 3 bolts from front to back. This one's directly under the battery tray. You can see the level of corrosion that's on there. It's a zinc plated bolt and the tip of it is really rusty. The other 2 are not too bad, they're just dirty. So what we'll do is get this one cleaned up, painted, and back into service. Look at all that flaky rustness. All shiny and ready to spray. There we go, so it's all dry now, and clean it while we could with a wire brush on the angle grinder. You can see bits like that. Buzzed away all the rust pretty quickly. Looks pretty much just like surface rust with a little bit of deeper pitting around the holes. There's the main weld there. All the surface rust cleaned off. And up top here, we use a little wire brush wheel on a Dremel. There we could. Now in this little bit here, all we can do is just get in with these steel toothbrush type things, just to brush all the loose paint away. You can see all the flakes that are coming off there. Some of that's dust and a bit of that's loose paint and rust flakes. But these little brushes are great. Got them from Bunnings. I think they're about $2 for 3, and you get stainless steel ones. Oh, in the pack of 3 you get a stainless steel, nylon and a brass one. So this one's the steel one. Actually, it's probably not stainless steel, but anyway, steel toothbrush. Got to be one of the most useful little doobies for working on a 4-wheel drive and washing it, especially if you have a lift. Now I can get up into the engine bay. Normally for this type of work I'd use a paint like POR 15, but I thought I could try something new this time. Got Penetrol here. So if you read the description, where is it? There we go. For badly rusted steel, you basically put a couple of coats on, wait until it dries, and then you can prime or paint over it with paint that's had Penetrol added to it. So give that a go and see how it goes. What I'll do is decant it into one of these little bottles, just to stop the big bottle getting contaminated. They also make good pasta sauce. Here's a trick when you're pouring. In a can like this, rather than going that way, if you go this way, it lets the air go in without, go in smoothly, so you don't have that gulping kind of thing. Or you could be smart and use a funnel. There we go. Okay, so I've got a new clean rag with some wax and grease remover. I'll just swab the area down. It's nice and clean. Cool stuff. So this is just cleaning it up for the first layer of Penetrol, where you put it on the rusted surfaces and it reacts and does its thing. We have to remember it's not a restoration. We just want to fix it, fix the rust, stop more rust from happening, and get back out bush. So it's not a restoration. You have to draw a line somewhere, and in this case we're drawing the line on that seam, coming across up to here, over onto the body mount bracket, which is just there. Can't really see it, and on the top surface of this chassis rail. So that's where the most of it is. Otherwise, I guess we'd spend all our time fixing little things and never enjoying it. So for this little segment, that's where the line is. By the way, you can see in here, I'll come back with a torch. It's nice and clean in the chassis rails. So there's the first coat of Penetrol down. It's pretty runny stuff. Doesn't seem to be dripping too far from where it's supposed to be. But, we'll let that settle in and then come back and do a second coat. It's also a good idea to label jars Penetrol with the date. So no mystery jars here. Well, here's our lovely reconditioned bracket and bolt. Looks pretty good. You can see still the pitting there from the corrosion, but looks good. Back in service. I guess, realistically you could probably just buy that bracket if Toyota still sell it, and it probably wouldn't be that expensive, surprisingly, but where's the fun in that? Okay, so we're having a look, and the penetrine has been on for about a week, and it's dried up now. You can see it's left this shiny glossy finish on the top of it. Looks to have sealed and protected that surface pretty well. You come over here where it was still a little bit red, rusty, and it's pretty stuck in there all the way up the chassis rail. So you can see the rust, but it's sealed in there. What we'll do, the mount is we'll come back, give it a good scuff up with some Scotch-Brite and a top coat of black paint so it looks all nice and neat, and see how it goes, and we'll keep checking in regularly and see if we see some rust bubbling up from where it was coated over, just in there. So it'll be a good test, but I guess if you really didn't want to go the whole hog, you could just leave it like that. It seems like a pretty hardy coating. You can see the Scotch-Brite scuffs up that penetrine pretty easily, so we'll get stuck in and give it a clean up. Be mindful when you do this kind of work is what kind of PPE you might need, or personal protective equipment. So hopefully it's capturing it. You can see all the dust flying off, so you don't really want to be breathing that. So I've got a mask on. Well, I'll put the mask back on once I finish talking. I'm also wearing nitrile gloves. It just helps to keep all the crap off your skin, and much easier to clean up at the end of the day. So it's all been scuffed up with a Scotch-Brite and wiped over with wax and grease remover. So wax and grease remover is still flashing off. It's all looking pretty good. And over here, also scuffed up this little area here to paint that bit there. So let's mix some paint. Okay, so we're going to mix up the paint for the chassis rail of the Prado, and just have to check. Well, what I want to do is use the Penetrol to help with the adhesion, and you have to check that it mixes properly with the paint that we're going to use. So the paint I'm using is Dulux Metal Shield epoxy enamel in flat black. So on the instructions here it says, you see that? For old badly rusted steel, apply 1 to 2 coats of Penetrol to saturate the rusted surface, which should get an overall glossy appearance. We've seen that. Remove any scale and old paint loosened by the Penetrol and prime any dry spots. Let dry and follow with primer with 25% Penetrol added. Okay, so new lightly rusted steel. Then apply primer with 50% Penetrol added. So what we're going to do is start, well, firstly check that the Penetrol actually works with the epoxy enamel. So somewhere on here it says that you can only mix it with, what is it? Anyway, somewhere on here it says that only works with paints that can be thinned with mineral turpentine. Now, on the Dulux, it says that you should only thin it with the brush thinner or spray thinner. So I'm not quite sure what it is, but we'll mix it up, have a look, and do a little test to see if it blends properly. So you get ones that you're supposed to use proper thinners with, and when you put mineral turpentine with it, it separates like oil and water. So let's open the can up, stir it up and have a look. Now you can get a proper tin opening sort of screwdriver type thing, which you really should have, but I don't. Just going to use a screwdriver. Luckily that didn't go on anything. Okay, so for stirring we have a brand new, genuine Japanese paint stirring stick from your local sushi restaurant. So let's give it a bit of a stir up. And see just how thick that paint is there. I'm going to stir it up, and I'll probably end up thinning it a lot more than that with the Penetrol to get it to a good brushing consistency. do is put just a little bit of this paint into a spare tin. Now these tins, it's genuine Italian diced tomato tin, very suitable for this kind of work, and I'll add a little bit of penetrol into that and see if it mixes up. There. Here's that jar from the other day. Let's have a look in there. So, mix it in a little bit. So you can see there, it looks to blend pretty reasonably. So, looks alright. What I'll do is use this jar for the paint and penetrol mixture, label it accordingly, and then I'll have that there for next time. So, what I'll do is, we won't waste this. And before we do that, another trick with paint tins is to knock a couple of holes here in this little seat where the lid sits. I saw this on a YouTube channel, on Peter Anderson's YouTube channel actually, and seems like a good idea. He reckons he's never had any issues with it, so I'll give it a go with this tin of paint. Normally I just put a piece of plastic or knock the lid on, and yeah, sometimes it works, seals it up, and sometimes it doesn't. So the biggest issue you have is when the paint sits in this lip. So give it a go with this and see what happens. So the other thing we can do is just check carefully, because if you do get a spill, you don't want all the paint running down over important things like the instructions or the safety information. So yeah, looks like a good spot, so I'll knock a couple of holes in here and I'll pour it using that part. So that's just a standard bright bullet head nail, and as you can see I should have been wearing gloves, but anyway. Pour a bit of paint into here, it's probably more than enough, and you can see the issue you have with paint sitting in that lip. So hopefully those holes that I've drilled have caused it to drain back, which you can sort of see it's draining back already in there. Now, this is the brush we had the other day. It's all been washed and cleaned, so I'll just use that to tidy up that. It. There we go, pretty clean. Put that over there. Mix that up. Okay, so that's mostly paint in there. And I've got a black texture. Hopefully it still works. Yep. What I'm going to do is mark off roughly where it is, so that's up to there. Actually what I should do is use a different colour. That's probably more intelligent. The blue paint marker, and the paint itself is roughly there. So up to 25% more would be a quarter of the distance from there to there, roughly, ignoring the bowl shape that we have here. So there's half, there's a quarter, so probably about up to there. See that? So what we'll do is put a bit more, but realistically we're just going to thin it until it's a reasonable consistency for brush painting. At the moment it's a bit thick. Probably use this. The reason I want it a little bit thinner but not too thin is so that it flows out nicely, but also not so thin that it just runs out everywhere all over the place, because we're painting horizontal and vertical surfaces. So sort of got a bit of a stream coming off the end, and we are almost at that mark anyway. See if you can see that there. See, there's a stream of paint coming off the end. That's probably quite okay for our painting purposes. So just knock the top back on this. The other thing some people do is they store them upside down. You're paranoid about them leaking, so give this a go for now. So let's put that back on there and go and put some paint on. So here's our nice clean patch. Bit of paint on the brush. Let's have a look. It's pretty good. You can see you still get the paintbrush lines, but not too fussed with that. A bit of rust there, so we'll just get that covered up as well. So I'll put down a light coat, let it flash off, and then come back and touch it up. So the first coat has gone down. You really don't want to overwork the paint as you lay it down. It does seem to flow out a little bit. Could have probably made it a bit thinner with the Penetrol, and it would probably have flown out a little bit better. But you'd also get a higher risk of runs. Looking pretty good. All the welds are nicely sealed up. Same with the seams in the chassis rail. I purposely didn't splash all the paint into the threaded hole there because I want to use it for something later on, and that's just actually surface mud and things that are in there rather than corrosion. So we'll leave it to flash off and then come back and put another coat. So after the first coat, colour match is actually pretty good, so you can hardly tell it's there. Definitely not when it's covered with mud anyway. You can see there's a bit there that wasn't quite covered up in the first pass, so I'll probably do another 2 coats. And on the front section, looking pretty good. So all done and dusted. Looking up in there. Okay, so we've got those little bolts back in. We have the one for the hose clamp, the ground, and the electrical loom support. So this one is a ground. So what I want to do is just make sure with our multimeter that, put it there, can you see it? No. Just make sure that, oh no, all of it's just slightly out of frame. What about there? Oh, I can't solve it. We just want to make sure that we've got good ground. So let's have a look. We've got the negative terminal wedged in, and just going to check on here. That's pretty good. 0.2 to 0.02. A good connection on here. .2 ohms. Pretty good.